Good day, dear students. So, we are back, and for today's discussion, we will be continuing the topic about determining progress towards attainment of learning outcomes. Okay, so the part one of this discussion can be seen in my playlist, okay, namely Assessment in Learning 1. So, let's continue. Okay. The next topic will be on assessment. So when we talk about assessment, this is the process of gathering evidence of a student's performance over a period of time to determine learning and mastery of skills. So if you will ask the question, why do we assess? Well, mainly because it is an effective way to know if learners apply what they have learned in real and authentic situations. So, why is it important to assess? So, there are these, what do you call this one? These things, okay, which make assessment important. First one is to find out what the students know, okay? So, it deals on knowledge. Second one is to find out what students can do and how well they can do it. Mainly, it deals with skill or performance. Next one, to find out how the students go about the task of doing their work. So it emphasizes the process. So another one reason behind is to find out how learners feel about their own work, which is on motivation or effort. Really, class assessment results show the more permanent learning and clearer picture of the student's ability. With this, we can immediately infer that assessment is an ongoing process or process oriented. It is in here that we can identify whether our teaching way is likable or not, effective or not. So we have also the different types of assessment, namely formative, summative, diagnostic, and placement. So the first one is the formative assessment. Formative assessment tell us how well the student is doing as work progresses. Okay, so this allows the teacher to redirect and refocus the course of teaching, okay, a subject matter. So some examples of formative assessment include quizzes. Okay, for example, a teacher asks the learners to draw a concept map to represent understanding of the topic. Okay, with the given examples class, we can immediately infer that it is given after a topic is discussed. That is to check whether they have or the students or the learners have grasped what you have just taught or not. So in this type of assessment, you are merely forming them and not grading them. Um, Aside from the given example, one good example is recitation class. Okay, so for example, um, in during our face-to-face classes, while the teacher is discussing his or her topic, okay, in the process or during the process of um, teaching and learning, okay, the teacher can ask questions and can ask any among the learners if they actually understand what is being discussed in the class. Okay, So, this recitation. So, what is the goal of this assessment? So, this is to verify if we can proceed to the next topic or not. So, dito, tatanungin natin yung sarili natin. As teachers, is learning takes place? Okay. So, if you verify that you are now ready or the students have grasped what you are discussing, then you may proceed. But if not, okay, that's the time na iisipin mo, what strategy or technique should I apply in order for my students to be able to understand the topic? Okay, so that's formative assessment. Okay, next one is the summative assessment. So when we talk about summative assessment, it tells us how well the student did at the end of a unit or period. So in this type of assessment class, it determines the extent to which the learning objectives for a course are met and why. So, if in formative assessment ang tanong natin, is learning takes place, can we proceed now, okay, to the next topic? Are the students ready to jump into the next topic? So, kung yun ang tanong sa formative assessment, sa summative assessment naman, we usually ask ourselves as educators of the question, what have the students learned from the formative assessments? Okay? Meaning class, summative assessment is the summary of learning experiences. Okay? If formative assessment is not graded, now summative assessment is graded. So an example of this, okay, include final examination and periodical tests so that you can relate sa inyo naman prelim exam, midterm exam, semi-final exam, final exam, those are identified or those are examples of summative assessment. Okay. Next one class is the diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessment tell us what the student needs to learn. Okay? So it determines the gaps, lapses in learning process. Hopefully, to be able to bridge these gaps or these lapses. So ngayon, tatanungin natin yung sarili natin, why do we diagnose? Ano nga ba? Bakit kaya? So, why do we diagnose? Well, it is a great way to understand the preliminary learnings as well as the prerequisite knowledge about the subject that we are going to teach, which the learners did not catch up during the previous year. Okay? So in a simpler manner, it is conducted before instruction. That's it. Ang diagnostic assessment, it is conducted before instruction. So, an example of this include phonological awareness surveys, okay, or students' works samples. Okay, so diagnostic test class are or diagnostic assessments are conducted in order for us teachers to note whether the students have mastered this topic or kailangan ba natin ng remedial regarding this topic? So, I'll give you an example. For example, your topic is on sentence construction. Okay? So, on sentence construction, of course, una, ang kailangan natin na ituro as English teachers okay, is that yung subject and verb agreement. So ngayon, mag-conduct tayo ng diagnostic assessment. If you give them a quiz, okay, regarding subject verb agreement, okay? So, in that diagnostic assessment, you can be able to identify kapag maraming nakakuha ng tamang sagot, and you as a teacher are able to identify that the students have mastered already the subject verb agreement, then that's the time na hindi mo na i-re-teach um, yung topic na yon. Bagkus, proceed ka na sa sentence construction kapag ka grade 8 sila. Ang diagnostic test kasi before ka mag-discuss sa kanila. Okay? Next one is placement assessment. On placement assessment class, this tell us where a student would most likely excel. Okay? So it is to determine the appropriate area where the learner, okay, already master both in achievement and aptitude. So dito naman i-identify mo kung saan yung pinaka-master na skills ng bata, both in achievement and aptitude. An example of this type of assessment is the NCAE, the National Career Assessment Examination. Additionally, okay, sa school sana, an example of this assessment is when the school needs to select, okay, students who will be going for a quiz bee competition. So that's a placement assessment. Okay? So those are the different types of assessment. Again, we have four, which include the formative, summative, diagnostic, and placement. Now, we proceed to the purposes of assessment. Okay, assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. So let's deal first with assessment for learning. Assessment for learning is done to improve and ensure learning. Okay, based from the conjunction for class, so yun na yung clue ninyo, formative assessment. So this is actually recorded but not graded. Okay, so ano naman yung goal ng assessment for learning? So this is given while the teacher is in the process of student formation, so the learning process. The very aim of this one is to ensure that learning is going on while the teacher is in the process of teaching. Because what is teaching if there is no learning? No? As I mentioned during our part 1 discussion, it is not about what the teachers teach, but it is about what the students learn. So an example of this class is Seatworks. Okay, so you may give them Seatworks. Additional example is yung mga board works. For example, kapag math sana, if you after discussing the topic, you let them um, solve a problem on the board to check their mastery. Okay? Recitation could also be. Okay? Next one is, kung may assessment for, meron din tayong assessment of learning. Assessment that is usually given at the end of a unit, grading period, or a term like semester. So, this is actually for grading purposes. So, an example of this is prelim, midterm, final, and mastery test. So, this is referred to as your summative assessment. Okay? Next one is assessment as learning. If we are going to flip yung as, it will become sa. So, that will be your clue. Self-assessment. So, it is an assessment where students assess their own work. This is actually for monitoring of own learning. So, an example of this includes reflections and insights. Okay? Meaning, In this type of assessment, students set their targets, actively monitor, and evaluate their own learning in relation to their set target. So as a result, learners become self-directed or independent learners since they are also learning while assessing their own learning. Okay, so that's assessment as learning. Again, the trick is baliktarin ninyo yung as, magiging SA. So, self-assessment. Next, common term class that we need to know is evaluation. Evaluation is a process designed to provide information that will help us to make a judgment about a particular situation. So it is also the process of gathering and interpreting evidence regarding the problems and progress of individuals in achieving desirable educational goals. More so, class, it helps us educators determine the success of their academic programs and signal efforts to improve student achievement. So we can infer that evaluation is product oriented. So evaluation is the judgment. Okay. So evaluation has two categories. So the two categories of evaluation include formative and summative. So let's deal first with the formative evaluation. So this is a method of judging the worth of a program while the program activities are in progress. So the very focus of it is on the process. Okay, so it is to determine deficiencies, lapses, and gaps so that the appropriate interventions can be done. Okay, next one is the summative evaluation. So this is the method of judging the worth of a program at the end of the program of activities. A formative evaluation, okay, is a method of judging while the program are in progress. Dito naman sa summative, at the end na of the program activities. So mainly class, the very focus is on the result, okay, the outcome. So it is to determine the effectiveness of a program or activity based on its avowed purposes. So that's all about evaluation. Now class, since assessment and evaluation are sometimes being used interchangeably, here now a comparison, okay, between assessment and evaluation. So when we talk about assessment, it is an ongoing process. Okay, so while in evaluation, it provides closure. So meaning the judgment part. So in assessment, it improves learning. Kasi in the assessment term, okay, it is in here that we discover our what certain strategies, what certain techniques that the teacher should do in order to further improve, okay, his or her teaching skills so that there will be an improvement of learning process also. Okay, um, while in evaluation, judging of quality. Now, you judge in evaluation, you judge the quality of what you produced. So what you produce means I am referring to your learners. Okay, so in assessment, it is individualized, so it's given. While in evaluation, it applied against standards. Okay, next one, in assessment, it provides positive feedbacks. So during assessment, um, you infer and it is a part where you can identify the positive feedback. Whereas in evaluation, it is now the part where it shows shortfalls. So it is since as I mentioned a while back, the evaluation is the judgment part. It is now also in here that you reflect, okay, and you identify your shortcomings as an educator and even as a learner. Okay. So assessment is process oriented. Okay. It is in the process, while evaluation is product oriented. Ibig sabihin, it is already the end result, okay, of the process. Okay, so that's the difference of assessment and evaluation. Now, to summarize the topic on measurement, evaluation, and assessment, I have here an example. So student X got 35 over 50 in the pre-test and 45 over 50 in the post-test. His or her professor said that his or her performance in tests, okay, is very satisfactory. Okay. So in this example class, the figure 35 over 50 or even the 45 over 50 pertains to measurement, okay? And the very satisfactory is the evaluation. It is the judgment already uh, of the process. And this whole example, okay, I mean documenting the entire process is what we call assessment. So that is measurement, assessment, and evaluation. I hope you have learned something. So to end our discussion, remember that a teacher is like a magical mirror that will show you your future. Imagine if you have no teacher, it may mean you have no future. That is according, okay, by Gracia Hunter. So, dear students, I hope you have learned something. Okay, so if there are queries regarding the presentation, you may just comment down below. Have you learned something today?